Washington Journal continues.
Former presidential candidate and physician, Representative Ron Paul of Texas' 14th District and a member of the Financial Service Committee, our final guest this morning. Mr. Paul, I was thinking when I was listening to some of Senator Sanders' answers that there are many areas where your views intersect. Both of you are strong critics of NAFTA. Neither of you voted for the TARP program, and yet your prescriptions for how to fix the economy couldn't be more different. What do you think will work with what ails the United States right now?
Well, nothing's going to work unless you understand how we got into the problem. A lot of people object to me saying that because they want to do what we have to do right now. But as a physician, I was always taught, you have to know what caused the disease to know how to give the treatment. And if you look at that, you find out that it was too much government, from my viewpoint. Too much spending, too much debt, too much inflation by the Federal Reserve, too much interference in the marketplace, too much price fixing of interest rates, too much propping up of certain industries like houses, and then you get a bubble. You have to understand how the bubble is formed, and then you can expect, the collapse of the bubble, which we as Austrian economists predicted would happen, and it did. So therefore, what you want to do is, if you know there's a lot of pain and suffering and malinvestment and excessive debt, the treatment is you got to get rid of it. That means you have to liquidate the debt and remove all the mistakes, the malinvestment, which politically it means take more of a hands-off position. And that, of course, nobody can do that. Politicians are trained to do stuff. But government can do things to improve things. They could lower spending, they could lower taxes, they could deregulate, they could regulate the Federal Reserve, which we don't. We could regulate the Treasury when they're given $350 billion to spend. So the regulation is directed in a different manner. But we're doing exactly the opposite. We're doing more like we did in the Depression. The Federal Reserve and excessive government caused the boom of the 20s and the Depression of the 30s by not allowing the correction, not allowing the treatment. The treatment is the liquidation. There is some pain with that, but the pain is a result of the mistakes made previously. The question is only now, do you have short-term pain that lasts for a year, or do you keep propping the bad system up and allow this pain and agony to grow and lengthen? And that's what we're doing. And that's why we're in great danger now of taking a very, very serious recession and turning it into a depression.
What we are seeing in a very short period of time, second half of the TARP, the second tranche, $350 billion. The Senate price tag on the bailout package, the stimulus package, $880 billion. And news that the Treasury Secretary is likely to announce a large package, which may include the creation of something called a bad bank. What do you see as the outcome of these measures? Where are we going with this?
Ultimately, it's the destruction of the dollar. We have a financial crisis. The financial system has collapsed because it was based on a fiat dollar standard, which came out of the breakdown of the Bretton Woods. The Bretton Woods was established in 1944, broke down in 1971. The dollar then became the gold of the world. We were given the privilege of just printing the money, so we could live beyond our means. We didn't have to work. Jobs went overseas, and this created the whole bubble. But now that system has ended. The financial system has collapsed, and it's not working. And I'm sure behind the scenes, the international bankers, including Bernanke, are worried and drastically about this and are devising a new system. But where we're going is the destruction of the dollar, because everything we do, whether it's Treasury, whether it's the Federal Reserve, whether it's the Congress, it all means print more money, pass it out. And that will lead to more devaluation of the dollar. The dollar now, compared to the dollar the Federal Reserve inherited in 1913, is worth about 3 cents. And with the amount of tremendous acceleration of spending and deficits, we're going to eventually set the stage for a possible panic out of the dollar. And we have had a taste of that in the 1970s, but Volcker was able to revive confidence in the dollar. This go around, though, it's much, much more serious. So where we're going on the policies we have today is a probable destruction of the dollar, and that's worse than the conditions that we have today.
What does America look like then?
it will be destined to be much poorer. Of course, everybody knows we're getting poorer now. But if you as an individual or I as an individual live way beyond our means and borrow a lot of money, it's easy to understand, oh, well, we have to quit borrowing. Oh, we have to pay our debts. Oh, we have to get a job. A country has to do the same thing. We've lived beyond our means. We depended on borrowing trillions of dollars from overseas, which means now we have to get jobs, we have to work, we have to pay down debt. The only question is are we going to allow the market to operate and cleanse the system and get back to work quickly, or are we going to prolong the agony by propping up? For instance, one of the goals has been to keep prices of houses up and to stimulate housing. You don't want to do that. We have 1 million too many houses. We overbuilt because people were deceived into thinking there were savings because the Federal Reserve had low interest rates. And we don't need new houses. But we need to help the poor people who save their money, because we want the prices of houses to go down and let these houses be sold. But if you keep a $100,000 house artificially higher than that, no, people aren't going to buy it. So who gets to buy them? Well, the taxpayer in general. Bail them out at artificially high prices. But not only do we bail out the housing industry, but we're buying up these derivatives which have no value. That's where these trillions of dollars are involved, and that's why we're bailing out the financial system, not just the house owners. The house owners are going to be left behind, no matter how well-intended these programs are.
Let me get to calls because everyone wants to talk to you here. Georgia Mountain, Alabama, your first Republican line. Go ahead.
Yes, I really wanted to talk to Sanders there, but if you'd let me make a comment after I ask some questions here.
Sir, we had a lot of callers. Very quick, please.
Well, I've waited
I understand,
almost an hour.
sir, but very quick, please.
Yeah. Any rate, since the Democrats have taken over, they've been in there 2 years, and they're a monolithic voting bloc on all of these expenses. We're going to have a $2 trillion deficit next year. We haven't even got to the omnibus bill for this year, which is going to add more billions to the deficit. Nobody can imagine us ever having and it's under the Democrats, since they've taken control for 2 years, these neocons, and that's what I wanted to ask this Sanders, which of the 10 platforms in Marx's manifesto didn't he approve? But
okay, sir, what's the question?
Here with this deficit that we'll never get out of it, and then the interest on this deficit, we've got to pay that. We'll be year after next, we'll be $3 trillion in a deficit on our budget.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in at that point. Thanks very much. Congressman Paul?
Well, I think the gentleman has a few good points there, but the one thing that I would object to is saying that it's all the Democrats' fault. Yeah, they're certainly big spender, and they sort of identify themselves with big spending. But part of this problem, we as Republicans have to admit, in these last 8 years, we didn't do very much to bring fiscal responsibility to this city here in Washington. Believe me, the spending has been bipartisan. And one reason for this is neither party will look at foreign policy and the empire that we're operating. We spend $1 trillion a year maintaining a world empire, and all great nations have been brought to their knees because they won't look at foreign policy. They think they can police the world and maintain an empire. And the Soviets collapsed for this reason, so it's bipartisan, believe me. But you're concerned about these huge deficits are justified, and that is the reason I advocate less spending and a balanced budget.
Hackett, Arkansas, it is. Democrats line.
Hello, my name's Dan. I think we've got a taxable economy, and we got a non-taxable economy. We have 3.5 million not-for-profit organizations in this country. I found out that 1.5 million of them brought in $309 billion last year. That's non-taxable income. Where's all this money go? We don't know how many of these 3.5 million non-taxable corporations, or whatever you want to call them, goes.
Thank you.
Well, I think you have a good point, and I think all people should be treated equally. So if they're doing no harm.